Hi everybody, this is Anne. There are so many occasions throughout the year where we're looking for gifts. Of course, as potters we have a great opportunity not only to make the gift for someone that we love, but even better, we can personalize it to make it even more unique. In this video, I'll show you 3 easy techniques to personalize your pottery, and I'll give you 3 gift ideas to use them on. First, for those who don't trust their own drawing and penmanship skills, I found these letter stencils in the craft store. I also found these flower stencils which I could accommodate into my design. The centers of the flowers are large enough that they might work as borders for the letters. The first thing I did was cut out one and carefully cut out the middle section. The letter fits perfectly in the center. Our project will be a set of coasters. I rolled out a slab of clay and used the shellac can as a sort of cookie cutter. I let the clay dry to bone dry. Now I can center my flower stencil over the circle. I traced all the open areas of the stencil to my disc. Now I can place the letter in the center and trace that as well. The stencil has open attachment points, so I closed those spaces to make it easier for me to see where to paint the shellac. I also drew a border around the disc. This is optional, of course, it's just borders are kind of my trademark. I'm using Xiem bullseye shellac that I found at the hardware store, along with a designated paintbrush that I'm only using with the shellac. I had to make choices about where to paint the shellac. I just had to keep in mind to maintain blank areas in between the shellacked areas for the technique to work best. I put on 2 coats just to make sure I coated everything. I waited a couple hours to make sure the shellac was dry totally. Now for the hydroabrasion. I start with a large bucket of water and a clean sponge. I gently wet sponge the surface of the coaster. You can see that the clay material comes off really easily. Also remember to rinse the sponge after every couple of swipes. The clay debris is like sandpaper, and if you don't rinse off your sponge, it'll chip away the shellac layer. It doesn't take too many swipes before you can feel the raised design. Keep swiping until those raised areas are distinctive. Now here's one I made earlier that I bisque fired to cone 04. The shellac burns off in the kiln, leaving a little smell, so I don't like to be present when the kiln's firing. As always, take normal safety precautions when firing anything in the kiln. I made this coaster set for Xiem. I was going to make it with our last initial, but I lost the R stencil. I used Amico Celadon glazes, Weeping Plum, Marigold, Saguaro, and Sky for the basic color scheme. If we have guests, they can choose a color and never get their drinks mixed up. The shellac was fun, but only good for use one at a time. Let's make a stamp that can be used multiple times. I started with a sheet of linoleum found at the craft store. Again, if you don't trust your drawing skills, I'm using the same stencils from the first project. This time, I need to flip the stencil, so I'm tracing the reverse of the letter into the linoleum. I'm going to use an ink pen so the lines will show up better on the gray surface. I actually started to trace the entire stencil, but changed my mind about those circular areas in the petals, as you'll see in a minute. Like the first project, I connected the lines to solidify the design and choose where to make the cuts. Instead of the circles, I chose straight lines in the petal centers for easier cutting. Here's my cutting tool with interchangeable blades, also found in the craft store near the linoleum. I'm starting with the wider U-shaped blade. Holding the tool almost but not quite flat to the surface, I carved a path from the linoleum around my inner circle. It may take a couple of passes. I then switched to more of a V-shaped blade for the smaller lines. Notice I like to work from the outer edge to the already cut inner line so I don't overshoot to make an unwanted gouge. Now here's a design I made earlier. I improvised a simple interior pattern around the letter. I'll show you how to use it. I rolled out a clay slab and rubbed a little cornstarch over the surface to keep the stamp from sticking. I press the stamp into the surface with the flat of my hand. A rolling pin will work too. There it is. Great! If you have any lines that need to be deeper, you can always recarve them. For the gift, I thought I'd use this hexagon form to make an ornament. I cut 2 of them and attached them together. I stamped the design and cut 2 of them, then appliqued them to the center of both sides. I carved a simple curved line pattern around the stamp. I bisque fired it flat in the kiln. For the high fire, I'll stilt it like this so nothing is touching the glazed sections. Of course, the glaze will only be in the very center sections of both sides. The borders of the piece will be unglazed. I glazed this one with Amico Glacier for that light color over the raised areas, but it's a bit darker where it breaks into the crevices. I can use that as a Christmas ornament or even as a garden ornament. I needed about a 2-inch diameter circle for this next project. The end of this tube is perfect. I traced 2 of the circles on a piece of paper. I cut them out with scissors. I folded the circles in half 3 times to make 8 sections. I traced the outlines of the pie pieces. I drew a cursive J-I-M on one side of a pie piece. On the other side, I drew a backwards A-N-N to mirror his name. If you can't draw in reverse, you can turn the paper over and draw the correct forward name there. This pie piece will be our template, so I cut it out. I need to graphite over the lines, so I held it up against a window and traced over the back of the template. Using the other circle, I began to fill in the pie piece with the stencil drawings. In the first pie piece, it's right side up. I flip over the stencil and trace the opposite side of the stencil in the next pie piece. I'm using a pen so you can see it in the video, but it's best to use a pencil to trace. Now here's a design I made earlier where I graphited the back with a pencil. What a cool personalized snowflake pattern. With the penciled side down, I placed the stencil over the stiff leather-hard clay disc. I traced the design over the clay. It's a bit difficult to see in the video, but I can see the trace lines well enough. I'm going to use this ball tool stylus to carve out the lines. The stiffer the clay, the easier it'll be to clean out all the clay crumbs. Now here's the finished design all cleaned up. It looks complicated, but when you break it down, it really wasn't hard, and tracing went very quickly. I just needed to press it firmly into the clay, rocking it back and forth a bit. There it is. That's exactly how I wanted it. I cut out 2 of the designs and mounted them on either side of a leather-hard hand-built mug. I created a carved handle to match the relief of the snowflakes. I glazed this with Amico Poppy Celadon glaze and fired it to cone 5 with a 6-minute hold for this beautiful bright color. This personalized yet disguised as a snowflake pattern mug will make a great holiday, wedding, or even anniversary gift. I'm sure there's a lot of other gift ideas that you can think of, from place markers at a holiday table to spoon rests or gift tags. Thanks to the newest members of our Little Street Pottery Research Facility team. If you'd like to join the team and earn a title, click on the Super Thanks button or the link to buy me a coffee. It also really helps us out if you hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. See you next time in the studio. I'm going to use this ball tool stylus to shove it up Jim's